If you are just starting out with filmmaking, the camera is the ultimate tool. Its mastery is crucial both for technique and composition. If you can master your camera, then you not only gain a huge amount of creative control over how your overall image looks, but also be a great image maker in the world of visual storytelling. To become a pro filmmaker, one must understand all the three variables that determine the exposure of an image: ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. All these form the exposure triangle. Spectrum Film School, making learning fun. What is aperture? How does it work? And how can you use it to capture images like the pros? Our eyes are able to look around a scene and dynamically adjust based on the amount of light in the scene. The pupil in our eyes is responsible for how much light is let in. It expands to let in more light, and contracts to let in less light. Aperture similarly works the same way. Aperture is the opening in the camera lens through which light passes in an optical or photographic instrument, especially the variable opening by which light enters a camera. A narrow aperture allows less light to hit the sensor, darkening your images. A wider aperture allows more light to hit the sensor, lightening your images. Aperture furthermore affects the area of an image that is in focus. This is commonly known as depth of field. Narrow apertures give a deep depth of field, allowing more of a scene to be in focus. Inversely, wider apertures create a shallow depth of field, which can help isolate a subject and is one of the greatest compositional tools at your disposal. The aperture size of your lens is measured in f-numbers or f-stops. This is based on how open or closed the aperture is. In the world of filmmaking and cinematography, depth of field can play a critical role in manipulating what your audience sees. Large aperture. This creates a shallow depth of field, like in the case of f1.4. Determining the focus object is vital in controlling the viewer's gaze, as you are telling them that what is in focus is the important thing to pay attention to. Filmmakers exploit this in moments of extreme drama to show how a character separates themselves from a situation, or a way of immersing an audience inside the mind of a character. During fear, anxiety, and any other pivotal moment.
I love you, Katie.
Let's take a look at the 2015 feature film, Fathers and Daughters. Gabriele Muccino utilized a shallow depth of field in this production to manipulate the audience, with Amanda Seyfried's character's perspective. Katie is just in her world. How she goes about her day is through a self-centered approach. By using shallow depth of field, one can really hone in that centric nature to her, because the background and what's around her doesn't really matter. It's just her, and that's all it is. You have to be careful with how much shallow depth of field you use. If you're shooting a 5D, you really don't want to be in the f1.4, f2.0, or even the f2.8 range, because you won't have each eye in focus. It's always a little strange if the nose or the eyes are out of focus. If you're focused on his or her eyes and their nose is out of focus, it's kind of weird. On the contrary end of the spectrum is the small aperture, which creates a shallow depth of field. For example, f22. With this technique, you are not isolating a specific object or subject.
That is not your daddy's shotgun, cowboy!
For the most part, the whole composition is in focus, showcasing your entire frame. It can work well for shots that feature landscapes or more grandiose settings. It helps place the action in the world and helps create cinematic realism for the audience. The highly celebrated filmmaker Stanley Kubrick was a big fan of using deep depth of field in his films. For example, in his 1987 Vietnam War film, Full Metal Jacket, he had a specific lens made that kept everything in focus, not just the main subjects. meaning that everything from close focus to infinite was sharp. He employed this lens during the boot camp scenes to not single out any one soldier. He believed that during this part of a soldier's career, they are all equal. So, to him, he needed every soldier in the composition to be in critical focus. Whether it be soldiers preparing for war, a family sitting down for dinner, or two characters in a heated discussion, depth of field can help manipulate your audience's understanding and expectations of what is unfolding on the screen. Since a shallow focus draws into the mind of a character, and deep focus help feature the exterior world. But what if we want to interpose the two? A medium aperture. Let's say f8. A medium aperture keeps the character's environment present while they still maintain focus. This technique is useful in dialogue or when engaging multiple subjects in the frame. Darren Aronofsky's 2017 horror film Mother used medium depth of field in this shot to actually crowd the character in the frame. We see everyone's faces in focus and feel them coming for her, nevertheless come for us too. This shot denies us safety and sets the tone of the film. On your next project, consider what the key components of the scene are. What is the audience supposed to take away from the scene? How can you mask that and make the audience work for it? We must learn how aperture works in relation to the other two variables in the exposure triangle to surely understand aperture. In the next episode of the exposure triangle, we'll explore ISO and how it is used to control the brightness and texture of an image.
Going home now. Number 5.
From me, Marine, sir. Go easy, bros. Better you than me.
Subscribe, click the bell, and we'll see you again in the next episode.